93% diagnosable depression, 86% compassion fatigue, an eNPS of -1, meaning more employees were actively warning people not to work there than recommending it. That was one agency's reality before they joined our program. But here's what should terrify every leader listening. They didn't know. They thought they had some challenges. They thought morale was a bit low. They had no idea they were presiding over a mental health crisis until we measured it. Welcome to the Leading High Performing Cultures podcast. I'm Dr. Renee Thornton, and today we're talking about what your culture data is really telling you and what happens when you don't have any data at all. In our last episode, we walked through $3.2 million in documented financial impact from culture transformation, but today I want to back up because before you can transform culture, you have to know where you actually stand, and most agencies are flying completely blind. Here is an uncomfortable truth. Most organizations don't measure culture. They feel it. They have hunches, they hear complaints in the hallway, they notice when someone quits, but they don't actually know where they stand against validated benchmarks. And that's like running a fire department without knowing your response times, or a 911 center without tracking call volume. Let me tell you what typically happens with engagement surveys. You hire a vendor, you send out questions, you get back a report that says 67% of employees are engaged, or 72% would recommend this as a place to work. Leadership nods, HR files it somewhere, but nothing changes. Why? Because those numbers don't tell you anything actionable. They don't tell you why people are disengaged. They don't tell you what specific trust relationships are broken. They don't tell you whether the problem is peer dynamics or supervisor relationships or executive leadership, and they certainly don't tell you what it's costing you. Engagement surveys that gather dust in someone's inbox aren't measurement, they're theater. At Pathfinder Resilience, we measure culture through 6 specific dimensions. Each one is validated by research, each one predicts specific organizational outcomes, and each one translates directly to financial impact. So let me walk you through them. Metric 1, peer trust. Peer trust reflects the extent to which team members are willing to be vulnerable with colleagues based on expectations of competence, integrity, benevolence, and predictability. Why does it matter? In emergency communications, peer trust directly impacts information sharing speed, backup behavior during high call volume, psychological safety during critical incidents. When peer trust is low, people work in silos. They don't ask for help. They don't share best practices. They suffer in silence and eventually leave. In one agency, we measured peer trust dropped from 85.7 to 77.8 in a single year. That 8-point decline cost them in ways they never even calculated. Metric number 2, supervisor trust. Supervisor trust measure employees' confidence that their immediate supervisor will support their growth, communicate honestly, and act in their best interests. Why does it matter? Here's something most executives don't understand. Supervisor trust predicts job satisfaction, organizational commitment, and turnover intentions more strongly than trust in senior leadership. So your frontline supervisors are the primary cultural translators between your vision and the daily reality. We've seen agencies receive 100%. That's exceptional, but here's what's interesting. That same agency that had 100% had fragmented leadership trust at 72%. The supervisors were buffering from the executive dysfunction. That's a warning sign, not a victory. Metric 3, leadership trust. Leadership trust reflects confidence that executive leaders are acting with integrity, are communicating with transparency, and aligning decisions with organizational values. When leadership trust is high, employees interpret ambiguous situations favorably. When it's low, they assume malicious intent. That's the research. And in practical terms, it means every decision you make as a leader gets filtered through a trust lens. High trust, benefit of the doubt. Low trust, suspicion and resistance. We split leadership trust into 2 components, integrity and transparency. And here's what we consistently find. Leaders often score higher on integrity than transparency. Staff believe leaders mean well. They don't believe leaders tell them the whole story. In one agency, 72% trusted leadership integrity, but only 61% trusted leadership transparency. That 11-point gap is a communication infrastructure crisis. Metric 4, workplace well-being. Workplace well-being captures job satisfaction, happiness at work, manageable stress levels, and a sense of purpose in one's role. It's not the same thing as wellness. Workplace well-being is your early warning system for burnout. High well-being indicates sustainable performance capacity. Low well-being predicts medical leave, errors, and voluntary turnover. Here's something that should concern every mission-critical leader. We consistently find what I call stress bifurcation. In one recent assessment, 38.9% of staff felt stressed most of the time. 38.9% didn't feel stressed, and 22% were neutral. The workforce was literally split between those thriving and those struggling, often in the same building doing the same job. Only 23% of employees globally are thriving. That's Gallup's 2023 data. So if you think your agency is different without measuring it, you're probably wrong. Metric number 5, individual wellness. Now, individual wellness assesses personal mental health indicators, including depression symptoms, feeling of overwhelm, and career entrapment, the negative dimensions that deplete psychological capital. So this is where we get into the crisis level data that most agencies don't want to see. Depression, when untreated, reduces cognitive flexibility and increases suicide risk. In first responder populations, we're dealing with people who were psychologically screened at higher, but those psychological skills are perishable under sustained stress. Research distinguishes between operational, the critical incidents, traumatic calls, and organizational stress. Toxicity, workload, poor leadership. Here's the finding that should reshape how every leader thinks. Organizational stress is more damaging to first responder mental health than operational. The job isn't breaking your people, your culture is. 43% diagnosable depression, 86% compassion fatigue. That was a baseline measurement. Those aren't outliers. Those are what happens when organizational stress compounds over years without intervention. The 6th metric that we measure in our current state analysis is the Employee Net Promoter Score, or eNPS. eNPS measures employee loyalty by asking one question: how likely are you to recommend this organization as a place to work? Scores range from -100, everyone's a detractor, to +100, everyone's a promoter. You subtract the percentage of detractors, or people who score 0 through 6, from the percentage of promoters, people who score 9 or 10. The 7s and 8s are passive, they don't count either way. Below 0 means you have more people warning others away than recommending you. 0 to 30 means you need improvement, 30 to 50 is good, 50 to 70 is excellent, above 70 is world class. Most mission-critical agencies I assess for the first time, they're below 30. Many are below 0. They have employees actively sabotaging their recruitment without even realizing it. One agency moved from -1 to +11.1 in 12 months. That's a 12-point swing from net detraction to net promotion. It's significant, but +11 is still in the needs improvement range. High-performing agencies hit 30 to 50. That's where we're headed. I use validated psychological instruments, tools that have been tested for reliability and validity across populations inside the mission-critical field. That's not just academic jargon. It means when I tell you your peer trust is 77%, I can compare that to benchmarks. I can track it over time. I can be confident the measurement is actually measuring what it claims to measure. Most cultural assessments are someone's interesting questions, but never been validated. You can't compare your results to anyone else's. You can't track meaningful change. You're just collecting opinions without a framework to interpret them. So that's our measurement framework. 6 dimensions, each validated, each predicting specific outcomes. Now let me show you what happens when those numbers start moving in the wrong direction. This is what is known as the deterioration pattern. Culture change typically takes 3 to 5 years to show measurable gains at the rate we achieved in 12 months. That's the research. Which means most organizations attempting culture change give up before they see results because they're treating it like a program instead of a capital project. But here's what's worse. Culture deterioration happens so much faster, and it follows predictable patterns that most leaders don't recognize until it's crisis level. So, you've tried things. Of course you have. Let me guess what's on the list. You've raised pay. Your competitors matched it within months. You've improved benefits. Those became table stakes. You bought new equipment. Nice. but it didn't change how people felt. You've implemented wellness programs. The people who use them were already the healthiest. You've conducted engagement surveys. You have binders full of data and nothing to show for it. You've done pizza parties, appreciation weeks, motivational speakers. People smiled politely, but nothing changed. These aren't bad ideas. They're incomplete ideas. They're tactics without strategy, symptoms treated while the root causes fester. Every one of these interventions assumes that culture is something you can purchase or program. Add the right ingredient, the recipe works. But culture isn't a recipe, it's an ecosystem. And you can't fix an ecosystem with spot treatments. So here's the fundamental shift. Culture is not a program to implement, it's a capital project to invest in. Programs depreciate the moment they end. Capital investments appreciate over time. A pizza party has zero value the next day. Leadership development creates leaders who develop others. Well, that compounds for years. I want to walk you through what's happened in the workforce over the past 5 years, because if you're still operating like it's 2019, you're already losing. I hate to break it to you, but that's the research. In 2021, launched the belonging revolution. The pandemic didn't just disrupt work, it fundamentally rewired what people want from it. Engagement drivers shifted from traditional metrics like confidence in leadership and growth opportunities to belonging and purpose. This was the most dramatic shift in engagement drivers in years. Career advancement, once the holy grail, suddenly mattered less than feeling like you were part of something meaningful. 2021 through 2024 is known as the expectations gap. Employee experience versus expectations became the most volatile metric, swinging an average of 7 percentage points year over year. People were calibrating in real time. Organizations that adapted earned loyalty. Those that didn't watched people walk. This is when the phrase quiet quitting entered our vocabulary. But let's be honest about what quiet quitting actually is. It's employees giving you exactly what you're paying for and nothing more, because you've given them no reason to invest discretionary effort. 2022 through 25 is known as the chaos factor. Nearly 40% of employees reported feeling pressure to be more productive, primarily due to the pace of change. But here's the critical finding. While employees adapted rapidly, organizational systems and processes lagged behind. Work felt harder and more complex, not because of the staff, but because organizations couldn't keep up with their own people. Your workforce is more adaptable than your bureaucracy. Let that sink in. 24 and 25, it's the exit and entry crisis. Organizations began failing at first and last impressions, arguably the two moments that matter the most. Employees ranked the application and interview process as the worst part of the journey. More than half of employees with less than 6 months tenure plan to leave within 3 years, compared to just 34% of the more tenured workers. Translation: organizations were breaking the relationship before it even started. Your onboarding isn't transferring culture, it's processing paperwork, while people form their own conclusions about whether this place is worth staying at. And in 2025, we see the young worker paradox enter the stage. This one should stop every leader in their tracks. Contrary to every stereotype about Gen Z being disengaged and entitled, workers under 25 emerged as the most engaged and enthusiastic of all employee groups. They had higher optimism about their future, about their careers, about their company than any other age cohort. But, and this is critical, they also had the lowest intent to stay long term. They're showing up with energy and hope, but organizations are squandering it. They're not disengaged, they're disappointed, and disappointed people leave. 2025 also revealed the benevolence trust gap. While 68% of employees believed their leaders were competent and 67% believed leaders' behavior aligned with organizational values, only 56% felt their leaders would act with benevolence, prioritizing employee well-being over immediate interests. Technical competence alone no longer builds trust. People want to know you actually care, and more than 40% of your workforce isn't sure you do. Competent, but not benevolent. That's how nearly half your workforce sees leadership. Think about what that means for your cultural initiatives. Before we move on, I need you to understand something fundamental. The employment dynamic has already flipped. This isn't a trend that might happen, it's a structural shift that's already occurred. For decades, candidates approached organizations asking, "What can I offer you?" They proved their worth. They earned their place. They were grateful for the opportunity. But today's candidates, particularly millennials and Gen Z, ask a different question. What can you offer me? Address the objection. Before you dismiss this as entitlement, consider the market reality. These generations have watched their parents get laid off after decades of loyalty. They've seen pensions disappear, benefits erode, the implicit social contract between employer and employee shattered. They're not naive enough to believe loyalty runs both directions unless someone proves it does. So they're asking, does this organization invest in its people? Is there a visible future here? Will I belong, or will I just be filling a slot until someone cheaper comes along? They're not asking because they're lazy or disloyal. They're asking because they have learned to protect themselves. So let's talk about the hidden costs. I want to translate all the info, all these numbers so that your CFO will understand them, because culture isn't soft, it's expensive, whether you're investing in it strategically or bleeding out through neglect. In mission-critical fields, replacing a single employee costs between $25,000 and $50,000, and that's before training even begins. That's advertising, screening, background checks, administrative processing. For specialized roles, it can exceed $85K. Now multiply that by your annual turnover. If you're running a 25% turnover rate on a staff of 150, that's roughly 37 departures per year. If 50 grand each, that's $1.85 million just to stay even, just to replace what you lost. Most mission critical roles require 6 to 18 months before an employee reaches full productivity. So every departure means starting the clock over. Every departure means another year of reduced capacity. But here's what leaders miss. Every departure triggers a loss of hope in their current staff. They're desperate for overtime relief. They see someone leave and they do the math. Great, now another year before we have another fully trained person. That's not just operational, that's psychological. Vacant positions don't reduce workload, they redistribute it. Mandatory overtime becomes the norm, and here's the cascade. Burnout accelerates, which means the people covering shifts become the next ones to leave. One agency I assessed had 44.4% of staff feeling overwhelmed by endless workload. That's not a staffing problem, that's a culture problem, creating a staffing problem, creating a worse culture problem. It's a loop, it's a doom loop. Undertrained, understaffed operations make mistakes. In mission-critical environments, those mistakes have consequences, liability, safety incidents, public trust erosion. This is the cost that never shows up in a budget line. It shows up in lawsuits and headlines, community relationships that take decades to rebuild. When good people leave, the people who remain notice. They watch leadership's response. They calculate their own options. If leadership does nothing, if the response is, well, we'll post the job and hope for the best. Survivors start updating their resumes. Departures breed departures. One resignation letter becomes 3, becomes 10, becomes a crisis. Conversely, when someone leaves and leadership responds with visible investment in the remaining team, that builds loyalty. The response matters more than the actual departure. So in our last episode, I walked through in our first episode, I walked through $3.2 million in documented impact from our 2025 cohort. But I want to connect that to what we've been discussing today. That money wasn't new money. That money was already being spent. It was being spent on recruitment, overtime, turnover, reduced productivity, presenteeism, people showing up and not actually contributing. Cultural transformation didn't create $3.2 million out of thin air. It redirected $3.2 million from waste to value. So here's the number I want you to remember. Every single percentage point of cultural improvement generates approximately $133,000 in annual value for a cohort our size. 1 point of peer trust, $28,500 in reduced errors and better collaboration. 1 point of supervisor trust, $36K in reduced turnover and better mentorship. 1 point of leadership trust, $42K in strategic alignment and successful change initiatives. 1 point of workplace well-being, $35K in engagement and discretionary effort. Individual wellness, 1 point, $58,500 in mental health costs and high performer retention. 1 point of eNPS, $19,000 in recruitment efficiency. Add it up. Multiply by your potential improvement, that's your ROI case. Now I need to be direct about something. These numbers are calculated from our methodology across real agency. Your results will vary, but culture work isn't like replacing equipment where you can predict exact outcomes. So here's what I can tell you with confidence. You're already spending this money. The only question is whether you're getting returns or watching it drain away. Agencies that do the work get results. Agencies that go through the motions, checking boxes without real investment, get mediocre outcomes. This isn't a magic wand, it's a methodology that rewards discipline and punishes shortcuts. So let me bring this together. Most agencies, they don't measure culture scientifically. They feel it, they guess, they hope, and they have no idea how bad it actually is until they're in crisis or until someone finally measures it. We measure 6 dimensions: peer trust, supervisor trust, leadership trust, workplace well-being, individual wellness, and eNPS. Each one validated, each one predicting specific outcomes, each one translating to specific financial impact. The workforce has already changed. The flip from what can I offer you to what can you offer me has already happened. Organizations that haven't adapted are hemorrhaging talent and don't even understand why. The costs are real. 6 to 18 months to full productivity, overtime cascades, risk multiplication, the survivor effect, and here's the thing. You're already paying those costs. The question isn't whether culture is expensive, it's whether you're investing strategically or bleeding out through neglect. So here's my challenge to you. Do you actually know your 6 numbers? Not what you think they are, not what you hope they are. What does your validated data actually say? If you don't know, you're flying blind. And in mission critical work, flying blind gets people hurt. The current state assessment is where every transformation begins. It's where we establish baseline, where we find out what actually is going on beneath the surface. Our 2026 Leading High Performing Cultures cohort is open for applications. So if you are a mission critical leader who's tired of guessing, tired of watching good people walk out the door, tired of culture initiatives that feel good but change nothing, I want to hear from you. But I'll be direct. We select for fit, not desperation. This work does require commitment. It requires leadership courage, willingness to hear hard truths and act on them. That sounds like you? The link is in the show notes. Learn about the program, see if it fits. And in the next episode or 2, we're diving deep into human capital, why your best people are about to leave, and what you can actually do about it. So until then, I'm Dr. Renee Thornton reminding you, 0 mediocrity. Your people deserve better than guessing. So give them data.